In 1972, during their divorce, Priscilla wrote Elvis a 10-page letter explaining everything. He refused to read it and threw it away. 3 years later, the housekeeper who'd saved it from the trash brought it back. What Elvis read destroyed him. Some truths hurt even when they come too late. It was August 1972, and Elvis Presley sat in his bedroom at Graceland, staring at an envelope Priscilla had just handed him. They were in the middle of divorce proceedings. The love they'd once shared had crumbled under the weight of fame, infidelity, and incompatible lives. "I wrote you a letter," Priscilla said quietly. "Everything I couldn't say out loud, everything I need you to understand. Please read it." Elvis looked at the thick envelope. He could feel multiple pages inside. "Priscilla, we've said everything there is to say. Lawyers are handling this now. This isn't for the lawyers. This is for you, for us, for understanding what happened." Elvis's jaw tightened. "I don't need to read a letter to know what happened. We grew apart. It's nobody's fault. These things happen." "Elvis, please, just read it. Not now if you can't, but someday, when you're ready to hear the truth." Elvis stood up, anger flashing across his face. "The truth? You want to tell me the truth in a letter? After everything? After the lies? After Mike Stone? After all of it?" Priscilla's eyes filled with tears. "That's exactly why you need to read it. You don't understand. You've never understood." "I understand plenty," Elvis said coldly. He took the envelope and, before Priscilla could stop him, walked to the wastebasket and dropped it in. "I don't need your explanations or your justifications. Save it for your lawyer." Priscilla stared at him, devastated. "You're making a mistake." "The only mistake I made was trusting you," Elvis replied. The words meant to hurt. Priscilla left Graceland that day and never lived there again. The divorce was finalized on October 9th, 1973. Elvis and Priscilla maintained a civil relationship for Lisa Marie's sake, but the intimacy, the ability to really talk to each other, was gone, and the letter stayed in the trash. Maria Rodriguez had worked as a housekeeper at Graceland for 3 years. She was a quiet, observant woman who took pride in her work and never gossiped about what she saw in Elvis's private spaces. The day Priscilla left the letter, Maria had been cleaning Elvis's bedroom. She'd seen the whole exchange, heard the anger in Elvis's voice, watched Priscilla leave in tears. After Elvis stormed out of the room, Maria approached the wastebasket to empty it. She saw the envelope, thick, obviously important, addressed in Priscilla's handwriting to "Elvis, please read." Maria had a rule. She never interfered in Mr. Presley's personal business, but something about this letter felt different. The way Priscilla had begged him to read it, the finality of throwing it away unread. Maria made a decision that went against all her professional instincts. She took the letter from the trash and hid it in her locker. For 3 years, Maria kept that letter. She didn't read it. That would be wrong. She just kept it safe, thinking that maybe someday Mr. Presley would want it. Maybe someday he'd be ready to hear what Mrs. Presley had tried to tell him. Maria watched Elvis over those 3 years. She saw him date other women, none of whom lasted. She saw him throw himself into work, touring constantly. She saw the medications increase, the health problems worsen, the loneliness deepen. She also saw moments when Elvis would talk about Priscilla with such sadness and regret. Times when he'd look at photos of them together and she'd see tears in his eyes. By 1975, Maria had worked at Graceland for 6 years. She'd earned Elvis's trust and respect. They occasionally had conversations beyond the usual employer-employee pleasantries. One day in November 1975, Maria was cleaning while Elvis sat at his piano, not playing, just sitting. "Maria, can I ask you something?" Elvis said suddenly. "Of course, Mr. Presley. Do you think people can really know each other? Like, truly know each other? Or are we all just performing for each other?" Maria thought carefully before answering. "I think true knowing requires listening, and sometimes listening is the hardest thing we can do." Elvis looked at her curiously. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes people try to tell us important things, but we're not ready to hear. So we don't listen, and then later, we wish we had." Elvis nodded slowly. "Yeah, I've done that. Refused to listen because I was too proud or too hurt or too sure I already knew everything. Maria took a deep breath. Mr. Presley, I need to tell you something. 3 years ago, I did something I probably shouldn't have done. She went to her locker and returned with the envelope. Mrs. Presley's letter. The one you threw away. I kept it. Elvis stared at the envelope like it was a ghost. Why would you do that? Because I saw how much she wanted you to read it, and I saw you throw it away in anger. I thought, maybe someday you'd want it back. Maybe someday you'd be ready. Elvis's hands were shaking as he took the envelope. 3 years old now. The paper was slightly yellowed, but the seal was unbroken. Maria had never opened it. Am I ready now? Elvis asked, more to himself than to Maria. Only you can answer that, Mr. Presley. Elvis didn't read the letter immediately. He put it in his bedside drawer, where it sat for 2 weeks. He'd open the drawer, look at it, then close the drawer again. He was afraid. Afraid of what Priscilla might have written. Afraid of facing truths he'd been running from for 3 years. Finally, on December 1st, 1975, late at night when Graceland was quiet, Elvis opened the letter. It was 10 pages, handwritten in Priscilla's careful script. Elvis began to read. Elvis, I don't know if you'll ever read this. Knowing you, you've probably thrown this away without opening it. But I have to write it anyway. I have to try to make you understand. You think I left because I fell in love with someone else. That's not the truth. I fell in love with someone else because I'd already lost you years before. You were already gone, Elvis. Gone into a world I couldn't enter. A world of pills and performances and yes men and fame that consumed everything. I tried to tell you. Do you remember? In 1969, I tried to talk to you about how lonely I was, how scared I was watching you destroy yourself with those pills, how desperate I was for you to just be present with me. With Lisa Marie, you said I was nagging. You said I didn't understand the pressure you were under. But Elvis, I did understand. I understood that you were drowning, and I tried to save you, but you wouldn't let me. You pushed me away every time I got close to the truth. You think you failed me. But the truth is more complicated. You failed yourself. You stopped being Elvis Aaron Presley and became Elvis Presley the brand. And that brand doesn't have room for a wife who asks questions or worries about pill bottles or wants you to be home for dinner. I don't blame you for loving your career. I don't blame you for the demands of fame. But I do blame you for choosing those things over us. Every single time. The affairs, yours and mine, they were symptoms, not causes. We were both trying to fill the emptiness with other people. But the emptiness came from losing each other long before either of us strayed. I know you think I'm the villain in this story. The wife who left the king. But Elvis, I didn't leave the king. I left a man who'd forgotten how to be a husband, a man who'd forgotten how to be himself. Elvis stopped reading. His vision was blurry with tears. Every word Priscilla wrote was cutting through his defenses, forcing him to see what he'd refused to see 3 years ago. He continued reading. I've made my mistakes. I know that. I'm not innocent. But I need you to understand something. I loved you. I loved you so much that I stayed years longer than I should have, hoping you'd come back to me. Hoping the man I married would emerge from underneath all the costumes and pills and performances. But he never did. Or maybe he couldn't. Maybe fame took him from both of us. By the time I met Mike, I was so lonely I couldn't breathe. I'm not excusing what I did. I'm just explaining. You'd been emotionally absent for years, and I was so tired of being alone while married. I wish I could have been stronger. I wish I could have waited, could have kept trying. But Elvis, I was disappearing, becoming nothing but Elvis Presley's wife. And I didn't know who I was anymore. I needed to leave to find myself. I needed to leave to survive. This isn't about blame. This is about truth. The truth that we loved each other, but love wasn't enough. The truth that fame and addiction and loneliness destroyed what we had. The truth that we both made choices that led us here. I'm writing this because I don't want you to think I didn't love you. I did. I do. But I couldn't live in the shadow of your fame anymore. I couldn't watch you slowly kill yourself and pretend everything was fine. I hope someday you'll understand. I hope someday you'll forgive yourself for not being able to save our marriage. Because Elvis, that's what I think you really can't forgive. Not me leaving, but yourself for not being able to stop me. You carry so much guilt. About your mother's death, about your twin brother, about every person you couldn't save or help. And now about our marriage. But Elvis, you can't save everyone. You can't be everything to everyone. And trying to do that is what's destroying you. Please take care of yourself. Please let people in. Please stop trying to be the Elvis everyone expects and just be you. If you're reading this, it means either you've finally decided to hear me or you found this years from now when it's too late to matter. Either way, know this. I loved you. I still love you. But I couldn't save you from yourself. No one can do that except you. Always, Priscilla. Elvis finished the letter and sat in silence for a long time. Then he started crying, deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place he'd kept locked away for years. She was right. About everything. He had chosen fame over family. He had pushed her away every time she got too close to the truth. He had been so consumed by being Elvis Presley that he'd forgotten how to be a husband and father. And worst of all, he'd thrown away this letter 3 years ago. 3 years he could have spent processing this, understanding, maybe even healing. 3 years wasted because he'd been too proud and too hurt to listen. Elvis picked up the phone. It was 2 a.m., but he called Priscilla anyway. Hello? Her voice was sleepy, confused. Scylla, it's me. Elvis, what's wrong? Is Lisa Marie okay? She's fine, I read your letter. Silence on the other end of the line. The one from 3 years ago, Elvis continued. I threw it away that day. But Maria, the housekeeper, she saved it. She gave it to me a few weeks ago. I finally read it tonight. Oh, Priscilla said softly. You were right, Elvis said, his voice breaking. About everything. I was gone. I did choose fame over you. I did push you away. And I'm so sorry, Scylla. I'm so goddamn sorry. Priscilla was crying now, too. Elvis, I don't expect you to come back. I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know that I heard you. Finally. 3 years too late, but I heard you. Thank you for calling, Priscilla whispered. I never thought you'd read it. I thought you'd thrown it away forever. I did throw it away. That's the worst part. I was so angry, so stubborn, that I threw away your truth without even looking at it. What kind of man does that? A hurt man, Priscilla said gently. A man who was protecting himself the only way he knew how. They talked for 2 hours that night. Not about getting back together. They both knew that wasn't possible. But about understanding, about forgiveness, about accepting what had happened and trying to move forward with clarity instead of anger. When they finally said goodbye, something had shifted between them. The bitterness was gone. What remained was sadness, yes, but also acceptance and a kind of peace. Elvis kept Priscilla's letter for the rest of his life. It was found after his death in August 1977 in his bedside drawer, read so many times that the pages were worn soft. Priscilla never knew how often Elvis read that letter in his final years, but people close to him said he'd take it out whenever he was feeling particularly lost or alone. He'd read it as a reminder of what he'd lost and why he'd lost it. That letter changed Elvis, said Joe Esposito, not in a dramatic way. He didn't suddenly fix all his problems, but he stopped being angry at Priscilla. He started taking some responsibility for what happened, and he tried, not always successfully, but he tried, to be more present in Lisa Marie's life. Linda Thompson, who dated Elvis after Priscilla, said Elvis once showed her the letter. He cried reading parts of it to me. He said it was the hardest thing he'd ever read because it forced him to see himself clearly. And what he saw was a man who'd let fear and pride destroy his marriage. Maria Rodriguez, the housekeeper who saved the letter, worked at Graceland until Elvis's death. She never spoke publicly about the letter until a 2010 interview. I didn't save it to interfere, Maria explained. I saved it because Mrs. Presley had poured her heart into those pages. It felt wrong to let that just disappear into the garbage. Even if Mr. Presley never read it, at least it existed. At least her truth was preserved. When asked if she thought saving the letter made a difference, Maria said, "I think it gave Mr. Presley something he needed. Not closure. I don't think he ever found that. But understanding. And sometimes understanding is the best we can hope for." After Elvis died, Priscilla found out about Maria saving the letter. She sent Maria a handwritten note. "Thank you for having the courage to preserve what I'd tried to say. I know Elvis finally heard me because of you. That means everything." The story of Priscilla's letter has resonated with countless people dealing with relationship breakdowns and the regret of words left unspoken or unheard. "My ex-wife wrote me a letter when we divorced," one man shared in an online forum. "I threw it away just like Elvis did. But hearing this story made me reach out to her 10 years later. It was too late to save the marriage, but at least I finally listened. At least I understood." Relationship therapists sometimes reference the Elvis and Priscilla story when discussing the importance of truly hearing each other during conflict. "Elvis couldn't hear Priscilla's truth when he was still in pain," said Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a marriage counselor. "He needed time and distance to be able to absorb what she was saying. That's human. The tragedy is that he lost 3 years because of pride, but at least he eventually opened himself to her truth. Many people never do." The letter itself remains private, held in the Presley estate archives. Only excerpts have been shared publicly, with Priscilla's permission, in authorized biographies. "That letter was the most honest thing I ever wrote," Priscilla said in a 2015 interview. "I poured everything into it, all my pain, all my love, all my understanding of what went wrong. When Elvis finally read it, 3 years later, I think it gave him peace. Not happiness, but peace. And in those final years, I think that's what he needed most." The lesson of Priscilla's letter isn't about reading letters or second chances. It's about being willing to hear hard truths. It's about putting down our pride long enough to understand another person's pain. Elvis threw away that letter because hearing Priscilla's truth would have forced him to confront his own failures. And in 1972, he wasn't ready for that. But by 1975, worn down by loneliness and regret, he was finally ready to listen. It's a reminder that timing matters. Sometimes we can't hear truth until we're ready, but it's also a reminder that some truths, even when they come too late to fix things, are still worth hearing. Because understanding, real, deep understanding, matters. Even when it can't change the past, even when it can't fix what's broken, even when it comes 3 years too late. Elvis and Priscilla couldn't save their marriage, but they did eventually reach understanding. And in the end, that was a kind of love too. Not romantic love, but the love of truly seeing and being seen. Priscilla had written, "Please just be you." And maybe, in reading her letter over and over in those final years, Elvis was trying to do exactly that, trying to find Elvis Aaron Presley underneath all the costumes and expectations and fame. He didn't fully succeed. The pills and the performances and the pressures were too much. But he tried. And he did it in part because of 10 pages written by a woman who'd loved him enough to tell him the truth, even knowing he might never read it. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is tell the truth and let it go. Trust that eventually, when the time is right, it will be heard. Priscilla did that. And 3 years later, Maria Rodriguez gave Elvis the chance to finally listen. And in those final years, reading and rereading his ex-wife's words, Elvis Presley finally understood what he'd lost and why. It didn't save him, but it gave him clarity. And sometimes, that's the best we can hope for. If this story of truth, timing, and the courage to finally listen moved you, subscribe and share it. Have you ever refused to hear something you needed to know? Let us know in the comments. Hit that notification bell for more true stories about the words we throw away and the second chances that bring them back.